Everyone's favorite red-pilled millennial film director is Ari Aster. In 2018, he came out with Hereditary, his game-changing directorial debut that found success both critically and commercially. His sophomore feature, MIDsommar, while technically less commercially successful, was another huge milestone for independent low-budget horror, and it cemented Ari as one of the most interesting and unique voices in the game. Ever since then, however, things have taken a turn for the worst for Ari, as his next two extremely polarizing features have failed to make back even half their budget. However, after the success of his first two films, A24 has basically been writing him blank checks for anything he's wanted to make ever since, which explains the 3-hour-long Kafka-esque nightmare that is Beau is Afraid. While many might cite Beau as the film where things started to go downhill for Ari, I would make the argument that the first red flags were raised back in 2019 with the release of MIDsommar. Since its release, there has been a long-standing debate between letterboxd users as to which film is superior between MIDsommar and Hereditary, and to me the answer is obvious. Now, following up the masterpiece that is Hereditary would be a challenge for any filmmaker, but the fact that it's even up for debate is crazy to me. Let me explain. The central focus of the film revolves around the rocky relationship between Danny and her boyfriend Christian. It's established early on that Christian is not exactly up to the task of being completely emotionally available for Danny, especially after what happens to her within the first 10 minutes of the film. We see Christian making attempts to be there for Danny, picking up when she calls him multiple times despite being berated by his friends for doing so, and consoling her after she receives the tragic news regarding her parents and sister. However, shit really starts to hit the fan when Christian reveals that he's planning on going to Sweden with his friends to attend the MIDsommar Festival, a fact that was kept from Danny until 2 weeks before his departure. Danny is understandably upset, and Christian tries to rectify the situation by inviting Danny to go with him, because that's totally not going to backfire at all. Danny reluctantly agrees, and from there we witness their relationship devolve into complete and utter turmoil. And this is where my issues with the film arise. A lot of the discussion that I see surrounding MIDsommar seems to agree on this sort of good-for-her mentality, as by the end of the film, Danny is able to leave her toxic relationship and finds a new surrogate family with the Harga people. My issue with this, however, is that this is not exactly a group of people that I would want to be a family with, and their actions throughout the film remove any sense of catharsis that I'm supposed to be feeling during the final 20 minutes. They are presented, at first, as a peaceful community whose lives revolve around simplicity and the well-being of the group as a whole, and the characters mostly buy into this notion until they see Mr. and Mrs. Smith go skydiving. After this happens, they become more skeptical of the Harga people and their somewhat unique rituals, but they do their best to understand the cultural differences between the Harga's way of life and their own. Throughout the rest of the film, however, the Harga's actions go so far beyond anything that would be deemed acceptable in any other culture. Danny is the only American character that makes it to the end of the film, as everyone else is either murdered, torn apart, or burned alive by the Harga people. Also, quick side note, we are told in an early conversation that the Harga respect the incest taboo, a notion that is later falsified when it is revealed that the oracles are produced through incest. So basically, not only are the Harga conspiratory murderers, but incestual liars as well. Not exactly what I would call an ideal blunt rotation. And this brings me to my next point. Does Christian really deserve everything that happens to him by the end of the film? Let's analyze. What are some of the things that Christian does wrong? He is unsure of his future with Danny, but too afraid to have that conversation with her. He doesn't tell her about his trip to Sweden until it's 2 weeks away. He forgets her birthday, but apologizes for it later. And he mooches off of Josh's thesis project and decides to do one that's very similar. Granted, a bunch of dick moves in a row. But what are the consequences for his transgressions? He gets drugged, raped by a group of women, stuffed inside of a dead bear, and burned alive. That just seems a little bit extreme personally. And I wouldn't have as much of an issue with this ending had Christian been acting on his own instincts for the final 30 minutes of the movie. The final straw for Danny is when she finds Christian having sex with Maya in what we'll refer to as the breeding shed. She sees this and assumes that Christian is acting completely on his own volition, but does not realize that he is actually being raped, as the Harga forced him to hit the ethereal Benjamin beforehand, effectively stripping him of his ability to consent to anything that's about to happen to him. What follows is something that I can only describe as being adjacent to Stockholm Syndrome, as Danny breaks down in tears and is comforted by the Harga sisters, the very people who are responsible for putting Christian in that position in the first place. I don't know, to me this just kind of feels like if someone broke your arm on purpose and then proceeded to put a cast on you and tell you how sorry they were that you broke your arm but not actually take any responsibility for it. Did Danny ultimately need out of this relationship? Yes. for sure. But I'm not really convinced that this was the best course of action to have her make that choice. By the end of the film, we are supposed to relate to Dani's sense of catharsis as she watches the temple burn with her friends and cheating ex-boyfriend inside. She has finally rid herself of the toxic relationship, and we assume that she finds a new sense of community with the Harga people, and decides to stay there and live with them after the credits roll. As an audience member, however, I find it difficult to relate to Dani's catharsis, as I have been shown that the Harga are even more ethically bankrupt than Christian was, and I see this as her trading one toxic relationship for another that's even worse. Now, is Christian the greatest boyfriend in the world? No. He's emotionally unavailable and has difficulty putting Dani first in the relationship. Him and Dani simply aren't a match. He's just not the one. But he does make it to the end of the film without drugging, raping, or murdering a single person, which unfortunately I cannot say is true of the Harga. It is for these reasons that I confidently emphasize the mid in Midsommar. While the direction, visuals, sound design, and performances are all top-notch, the story and character psychology leave me feeling nothing but a sense of emptiness as I watch the credits roll. I don't leave the theater thinking, wow, good for her. I leave thinking, man, he really should have broken up with her when her family died. Thanks for watching.